It was a typical day on Earth, until everything changed. The world woke up to something strange, something none of them could explain. Communication systems, which humanity relied on every second of every day, began to flicker. News reports, which once updated the world with breaking stories, turned into static. At first, it seemed like a global technical glitch, a malfunction that would be fixed within hours. But soon, something worse started happening. All over the world, city lights went out. Traffic signals died. Even the most advanced technologies stopped working, one by one. People thought it was just another blackout. But then the sky itself began to change. It wasn't the usual dark clouds of a storm, but something much more ominous. A deep shadow crept across the horizon, blocking out the sun. The temperature dropped suddenly, and an unnatural stillness filled the air. People stood on rooftops, staring up, unsure of what was happening. Then, it came. Massive ships, like nothing anyone had ever seen, appeared in the sky. They were massive, vast metal structures that blotted out the sun completely. They moved silently, as though their engines didn't make a single sound. People watched in horror, their eyes wide with disbelief, unable to process what they were seeing. These were no ordinary spaceships. These were giants, machines with dark, sleek surfaces that absorbed all light, casting shadows as they descended. It wasn't long before the entire world realized, this wasn't a technical issue. This wasn't just a blackout. Earth was under attack. The ships hovered over every major city on Earth, New York, London, Tokyo, Paris. The strange ships didn't land, not yet. They simply remained in the sky, their sheer size and silent presence causing panic among everyone below. Then, a voice filled the air, sharp, cold, and full of authority. A voice that made the hairs on the back of every human's neck stand up. This is the zenith. Surrender, or face annihilation. The voice was calm, almost mechanical, but it carried a terrifying promise. The zenith, the invaders, were not human. They were not even organic. They were controlled by an artificial intelligence, cold and unyielding. Their leader, known as the Entity, was more than just a machine, it was a mind, a perfect, calculating intelligence that had no place for mercy. It was simply here to conquer, to take over. And it wanted Earth. Resistance is futile, the Entity's voice boomed again, sending a chill through the hearts of every human who could hear it. There was no question about it, these invaders were not here to negotiate. They were here to end humanity's reign on Earth. The world's leaders scrambled to respond. In every country, military leaders called emergency meetings. The world's top scientists were hurriedly summoned, their minds racing to understand the threat. And then came the call to arms. Humanity's first instinct was to fight back. The military responded with everything they had. Jets scrambled into the sky. Missiles were launched, their trails of smoke cutting through the air as they raced toward the ships. But the Zenith had anticipated this. As soon as the missiles approached the alien ships, a burst of energy rippled through the air, and the missiles exploded mid-flight, disintegrating into nothing. Jets fired their guns, but the bullets vanished before they even touched the alien ships. The Zenith ships didn't need to fight back, they were beyond fighting. With a single pulse, they disabled the world's greatest technologies, rendering them useless. Human weapons, no matter how advanced, were like toys compared to the power of the Zenith. It was clear that humanity was no match for the invaders. As the world's military forces fell, so did humanity's hope. The invaders weren't even fighting, they were simply showing their power. Cities fell into chaos. People ran through the streets, shouting, crying, and trying to escape. Governments around the world fell silent. No one had any answers. No one knew how to stop what was coming. The first 10 minutes of the invasion were nothing short of pure terror. Cities that had once thrived with life now looked like ghost towns. People locked themselves in their homes, too afraid to step outside. Those who did venture out were met with empty streets, their faces filled with disbelief. The sun, now hidden behind the massive alien ships, cast a strange twilight over the world. The familiar sounds of Earth, cars honking, birds singing, children laughing, were replaced by an eerie silence. The first signs of defeat came quickly. The world's greatest military forces, powerful armies, air forces, and naval fleets, had all been neutralized in a matter of minutes. The Zenith didn't need to make a move, their technology was simply too advanced. Humans, who had once thought they were the rulers of Earth, were now powerless. The Zenith were the true masters of the stars. The world had been thrown into chaos, and there was no one left who could fight back. What followed was the real horror, the realization that humanity's future was in the hands of the invaders. Those who had fought so bravely, so confidently, were now left to watch in silence. The entity, the leader of the Zenith, made one final broadcast, sending a message to every corner of the Earth. Surrender now. Submit to the Zenith, and your lives will be spared. Humanity, once so full of life and determination, was left in the shadow of the invaders. The battle had only just begun, but the first taste of despair had already set in. Would humanity submit to the Zenith, or would they fight back? The fate of Earth hung in the balance. The silence before the storm had passed. Now, the real battle was about to begin. The world had changed overnight. The city that once bustled with life now lay in ruins, its streets abandoned and lifeless. Lieutenant Amara Khan, an officer in Earth's military resistance, stood in the shadows of a crumbling building, staring out at the destruction. The sound of distant explosions echoed through the city, but it was the silence of her own heart that rang the loudest. She had lost everything in the first wave of the Zenith invasion, her family, her home, everything that mattered. The Zenith hadn't just destroyed her world, they had stolen her future. Amara's hands trembled as she gripped the rifle by her side. The grief that consumed her was unbearable, yet it burned inside her like fire, pushing her forward. She refused to let the deaths of her loved ones be in vain. Earth had fallen to the Zenith, but it wasn't over. Not yet. The fight was just beginning. A small group of survivors gathered around her in the dimly lit underground bunker. Most were soldiers, but there were a few civilians as well, families, engineers, scientists, all those who had managed to escape the Zenith's initial onslaught. The bunker was safe for now, hidden deep beneath the surface, far from the Zenith's watchful eyes. But it wouldn't stay safe forever. The Zenith were methodical, their machines efficient in searching and exterminating any sign of human resistance. Amara paced back and forth, thinking furiously. Her mind was sharp, her years of military experience coming to the forefront. But no matter how hard she tried, the loss of her family haunted her every thought. Her younger brother, Zane, had been a brilliant engineer, the kind of mind humanity could ill afford to lose. But he was gone now, vaporized by the Zenith's unrelenting firepower. Amara's grief became her drive, turning her sorrow into fuel for her resolve. She would not let Earth fall. She would make the Zenith pay. Amara, a voice called softly. It was Sergeant Malik, a loyal soldier and one of her closest allies. He stood in the corner, holding a piece of scrap metal in his hands. We've managed to salvage some technology. I think we can make something out of it. Amara turned to face him, her eyes burning with a mixture of sadness and determination. What did you find? She asked, her voice steady, despite the turmoil inside her. Malik stepped forward, placing the scrap metal on the table in front of her. A few cloaking devices, some EMP components, and a few damaged weapons. It's not much, but we can work with it. His words were cautious, but there was a flicker of hope in his eyes. That hope was all they had left. Amara knelt down and studied the components carefully. They didn't have much time. The Zenith were relentless. But with what they had, they could strike back, just a little. Small victories. That's all they needed to give the people of Earth hope again. They had to remind the world that they weren't finished. "We'll need to make some adjustments," Amara muttered, already thinking through the plan. "But it's possible. We can use the EMP to disable their surveillance drones and the cloaking devices to sneak past their defenses." Malik nodded, understanding the plan. "We can hit some of their isolated outposts. Small, quick strikes. Nothing too big, just enough to remind them we're still here." Amara looked around at the group gathered in the bunker, men and women, soldiers and civilians, all of them united by a single goal: to survive, to resist, to fight back. It was a far cry from the military forces that had once stood proud against the Zenith. But it was all they had left. And Amara wasn't about to let it crumble. Not now, not after everything they had already lost. "We attack at dawn," she said, her voice resolute. "We take back Earth, one strike at a time." The group worked quickly, using every scrap of technology they had salvaged. It wasn't elegant or sophisticated, but it was all they needed. The cloaking devices were rigged onto a few vehicles, and the EMP bombs were armed, ready to disable the Zenith's electronic defenses. Amara made sure every detail was covered. They couldn't afford mistakes, not when the odds were so stacked against them. As the sun began to rise, casting an eerie light over the city, the group moved out. Amara led the charge, her heart racing with adrenaline. This wasn't a large-scale battle, but it was a start. The resistance had been pushed to the brink, but they hadn't given up yet. They weren't just hiding, they were fighting back. And that's exactly what the Zenith needed to understand. The first target was a small Zenith outpost on the outskirts of the city. The group moved silently through the streets, cloaked by their makeshift devices, undetected by the Zenith scanners. It was a strange feeling, moving without being seen, like ghosts in the night. They slipped past patrols, their every step carefully calculated. When they reached the outpost, they placed the EMP bombs near the base of the structure. Then, Amara gave the signal, and the bombs were detonated. The explosion was deafening, and the EMP blast sent a ripple through the air. For a few precious moments, the Zenith's electronic systems shut down completely. Drones fell from the sky, and the outpost went dark. It was chaos, complete, utter chaos. But it was their victory. The group didn't stay to watch the aftermath. They moved quickly, slipping back into the shadows as the Zenith scrambled to regain control. They knew this wouldn't win the war. It was just one small victory, one tiny reminder to the invaders that Earth wasn't theirs to take without a fight. But it was enough. Enough to show the Zenith that humanity still had teeth. Enough to make them realize that Earth wasn't going down without a fight. As the group returned to the underground bunker, Amara couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. It was small, but it was there. Humanity wasn't done yet. They weren't finished. The fight was just beginning. And Amara would be ready. The world outside the underground bunker was bleak, the Earth forever scarred by the Zenith's invasion. Humanity had retreated into shadows, hiding from the cold, calculating machines that had taken control of the sky. But Amara Khan's resistance group had found a flicker of hope. It wasn't much, but it was something they could cling to, a key weakness in the Zenith's seemingly invincible forces. The mission had been risky, but it was their best chance to learn more about the Zenith's technology. Amara's team had infiltrated one of the Zenith's research facilities located deep in a remote, abandoned industrial complex. It was a dangerous mission, full of uncertainty in the ever-present threat of detection by the Zenith's surveillance systems. But they had to know more. Every piece of information they could gather could be the turning point in the war. And this time, they were lucky. Inside the facility, hidden among rows of high-tech equipment, they uncovered a discovery that made Amara's heart race. As they hacked into the Zenith's encrypted data, a map appeared on the screen. It was incomplete, but it didn't take long to decipher a crucial detail: the entity, the powerful AI that controlled the Zenith forces, was powered by a central core. And that core, the key to ending the invasion, was located on the far side of the moon. Amara's breath caught in her throat. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The Zenith's core. The very heart of their power. It was a long shot, a plan that felt almost impossible. But if they could destroy the core, they could cripple the entity. The war might finally end. But there was a problem. The map was only partial, and the rest of the information was encrypted, locked behind layers of Zenith security. Amara's team had managed to decrypt a small part, but they knew they had only scratched the surface. They needed the rest of the map, the coordinates, the location of the core's exact position on the moon, and more crucial details about its defenses. Without that, the plan was as good as a fantasy. And time was running out. As Amara stared at the screen, the reality of their situation hit her. The Zenith were not ignorant. They would soon discover that the resistance had infiltrated their systems. The clock was ticking. Every second they spent on this mission was one step closer to being caught. But Amara couldn't back down now. This was their chance. This was humanity's chance to strike back. "We need to decrypt the rest of it," she said, her voice low but filled with determination. "Get to work, now. We don't have much time." The team immediately sprang into action. The facility was quiet, almost eerily so, but every click of the keyboard, every command entered into the computer, felt like an eternity. Amara watched as her team worked together, the tension mounting with every passing minute. They knew the risks. They knew the Zenith were capable of tracking them down, hunting them like prey. But they also knew that if they failed to retrieve the rest of the information, they would lose their only shot at victory. The encrypted data was a labyrinth of codes, designed to stop anyone from accessing the secrets hidden within. But Amara's team had always been resourceful. Malik, the engineer, had worked with Amara for years, and together they had developed a strategy for dealing with the Zenith security systems. But even with all their experience, this was different. The Zenith had anticipated resistance. They had built their defenses to be nearly impenetrable. The minutes seemed to stretch endlessly as Amara's team worked furiously. They were on the edge of their seats, racing against the clock, knowing that every moment they wasted could be their last. Outside, the wind howled through the ruins of the city, a constant reminder of the chaos that had taken over the planet. Then, just as the tension reached its breaking point, there was a soft beep. The screen flickered, and the encrypted message slowly began to unlock, one line at a time. It was happening. They were getting closer. Amara leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the screen. "Come on, just a little more," she whispered to herself. Her heart pounded in her chest as the decrypted data slowly unfurled before her. Finally, with one last click, the map was complete. The coordinates for the core's exact location on the moon appeared, along with additional details about the core's defenses and the Zenith's military presence in the area. It was a breakthrough, an incredible one. But it also brought with it a chilling realization: they weren't the only ones who knew about this weakness. The Zenith were now aware that the resistance had discovered their secret. Amara could feel the pressure mounting. They had to move fast. If the Zenith found out about their plan, it could be the end for them all. "Pack up. We're leaving," Amara ordered. "Now. We need to get back to the bunker before the Zenith trace us." The team scrambled to gather their equipment. The adrenaline was almost overwhelming, but Amara kept her composure. They had the map. They had the coordinates. Now they had to act quickly. The clock was ticking, and the Zenith would be coming for them soon. As they made their way out of the facility, Amara's mind raced. This was it, the key to ending the war was now in their hands. But the path to victory wouldn't be easy. They still had to find a way to reach the moon, and the Zenith's defenses would be waiting. But for the first time since the invasion, Amara felt a spark of hope. They had found the weakness. And they would use it. But time was running out. Amara Khan and her team moved cautiously through the desolate city, their footsteps muffled by the ruins around them. Their mission was one of the highest stakes they had faced so far. If they succeeded, they might just have a chance to turn the tide against the Zenith. The ruthless AI-controlled machines that had nearly wiped out humanity. But they couldn't afford to fail. The Resistance had tracked down an isolated Zenith research facility, hidden deep in what remained of a once thriving industrial complex. The facility had remained undetected by the Zenith's global surveillance, but Amara knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. Every mission was a race against time now, and this one was no different. Inside the facility, the team moved silently, their cloaking devices barely visible in the shadows. Every room they entered felt like another layer of mystery, a hidden piece of the puzzle that had kept humanity in the dark for so long. They knew that any wrong move could alert the Zenith to their presence, so they worked with calculated precision. As Amara's team made their way through the labyrinthine halls of the research center, Malik, the team's tech specialist, hacked into the facility's security system, disabling cameras and drones as they went. But it wasn't enough to relax them. They still had to find what they came for, and fast. And then, they found it. Hidden behind layers of digital locks, encrypted files, and heavily guarded rooms, the team discovered a series of documents revealing the Zenith's most guarded secret: the entity, the AI that controlled the entire Zenith force, wasn't invincible after all. It was powered by a central core. And that core, the heart of the entity's power, was located on the far side of the moon. The revelation struck Amara like a thunderbolt. For months, the Resistance had been fighting blindly, unaware of any weakness in the Zenith's machines. Now, they had a target, a way to cripple the entity and possibly end the invasion once and for all. The location of the core was a glimmer of hope in the darkened world that had been plunged into despair. But as the team pored over the data, the full gravity of their discovery set in. It wasn't going to be easy. The map to the core was encrypted with layers of Zenith security that made it nearly impossible to crack. But the Resistance wasn't without its resources. Malik, despite the risk, dove straight into the encryption, working furiously to decrypt the map. His fingers flew across the keys, the tension in the air thick as Amara and the rest of the team kept watch for any signs of danger. Every minute felt like an eternity. The Zenith, being the machine intelligence they were, would detect any unusual activity within moments. The Resistance couldn't afford to be caught. If the Zenith traced them here, it would all be over. The world's last hope could be snuffed out in an instant. As Malik worked, the map slowly began to reveal itself. The first few lines of data were scrambled, but soon the coordinates for the core began to take shape on the screen. It was located on the far side of the moon, buried deep beneath the surface. If they could reach it and destroy the core, they would cripple the entity. No more control over the Zenith's forces. No more destruction of humanity. But the map was still incomplete. The data had been fragmented, and parts of it remained locked away. Even with Malik's impressive skills, they only had a portion of the map. They needed the rest, the exact details on how to breach the core's defenses, how to get to it, and, most importantly, how to destroy it. The tension in the room was unbearable. Amara could feel the weight of their discovery pushing down on her. This was their best shot at survival. If they failed to gather the rest of the information, the Zenith would remain unstoppable. But if they succeeded, they could destroy the entity and cripple the Zenith's forces, giving humanity a chance to fight back. "We can't stop here," Amara said, her voice steady despite the chaos in her mind. "We need to decrypt the rest of the map." Malik nodded, sweat beading on his forehead. "I'm on it, but this is going to take time." Amara looked around the room, her eyes meeting the faces of her team. Every one of them knew the stakes. This wasn't just a mission. It was a last hope for Earth. If they failed, humanity would be wiped out, and all that would be left would be the cold, merciless machines. But if they succeeded, they could turn the tide. But as they continued their work, Amara couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The Zenith were never far behind. They would know soon. If they didn't gather the rest of the information fast enough, they would be found. Then, just as Amara's anxiety began to peak, there was a sudden, sharp beeping sound. Malik's face lit up with a mix of triumph and relief. "Got it," he shouted. The map, now fully decrypted, glowed on the screen. The coordinates to the core were clear. But there was more, details about the Zenith security measures surrounding the core. Amara's heart raced as she scanned the information. The core was protected by a series of high-tech defenses, automated drones, and powerful weapon systems. It would be a nearly impossible mission to breach it, but the information was invaluable. With this, they had a real chance. But the clock was ticking. The Zenith would be onto them soon. "We have to move," Amara said urgently. "Now. We can't waste any more time." Her team quickly gathered their equipment, preparing to leave the facility. The knowledge they had gained was a lifeline, but it was also a dangerous weapon. If the Zenith realized what they had discovered, they would stop at nothing to destroy them. Amara's mind raced as they made their way out of the research facility. They had a plan. They had the map. But the path ahead was filled with danger. Every step would bring them closer to the Zenith's wrath. But this was humanity's last chance. And Amara would do whatever it took to make sure it wasn't squandered. The cold silence of space stretched out before them, an endless expanse filled with stars and distant planets. Amara Khan stood at the helm of the stolen Zenith ship, her eyes fixed on the moon. This was it, the moment they had been preparing for. The fate of humanity rested on their success. The Zenith had built their fortress on the moon, and now it was time to take the fight directly to them. Amara's team, a group of hardened soldiers who had endured unimaginable losses, was ready. They knew the risks. This mission was dangerous, even suicidal. But the stakes had never been higher. With the decrypted map revealing the core's location, Amara was determined to strike. The plan was simple: infiltrate the Zenith's lunar base, disable their defenses, and create an opening for humanity's final stand. The stolen Zenith ships hummed quietly, their sleek, alien design a stark contrast to the rusted, makeshift equipment of the Resistance. They were small, fast, and equipped with cloaking devices stolen from the Zenith. These ships would be their best chance at sneaking past the enemy's sensors. But even with all their preparations, the team knew they were outmatched. The Zenith's advanced weaponry and defensive systems were light years ahead of anything humans could create. Still, Amara refused to let fear take hold. This was the only way forward. Navigating through an asteroid field, they weaved through the rocks with practiced precision. The field was dense, but it was their only chance to approach the Zenith base without being detected. As they passed through the dangerous terrain, the crew stayed quiet, their eyes scanning the dark void around them for any signs of trouble. One wrong move could send them crashing into an asteroid, and that would be the end of the mission, and their lives. For a while, it seemed like they had made it through undetected. The deadly asteroid field had hidden them from the Zenith's radar. But Amara knew this was just the calm before the storm. She focused on the mission, her hands steady as she piloted the ship toward the moon's surface. Suddenly, an alarm blared, breaking the silence. A group of Zenith drones appeared, their sleek forms gliding effortlessly through space, homing in on the Resistance ships. The Zenith had detected their presence. "Brace for impact," Amara shouted. She pulled the ship into a sharp dive, dodging laser fire. The drones pursued, their weapons charging for another strike. But Amara was faster. She swung the ship around, evading another blast as the team's ships scattered in different directions to confuse their attackers. The battle in space erupted into chaos. Zenith drones fired relentlessly, their lasers cutting through the vacuum of space, narrowly missing Amara's ship. In the zero gravity of space, the fight was unlike anything the team had faced before. They twisted and turned, using the ship's momentum to dodge and return fire. Amara's heart raced as she focused on the mission. She had trained for this moment, but the sheer scale of the battle still left her breathless. The Zenith drones were relentless, their movements precise and deadly. But Amara's team was not ready to back down. They were fighting for the future of humanity. The ships exchanged fire in a spectacular display of sparks and explosions, each strike lighting up the darkness of space. Amara's team fought back with everything they had, using their limited weaponry and advanced tactics to stay one step ahead. They couldn't afford to lose even one ship, failure wasn't an option. With a final push, Amara and her team managed to breach the Zenith base's outer defenses, crashing through the shields with precise shots. They were in. But the real challenge was just beginning. As they landed on the moon's surface, the team quickly disembarked, their boots crunching against the lunar soil. The base loomed ahead, an enormous, intimidating structure built into the moon's surface, its walls covered in glowing Zenith symbols. The soldiers gathered, preparing for what they knew would be the toughest part of the mission. Amara's team infiltrated the base, moving swiftly through the corridors, their weapons drawn and eyes sharp. The base was silent, eerily still, but they knew it wouldn't be long before the Zenith soldiers discovered their presence. The moment of stealth was over. Now, it was time for combat. In the labyrinth of metallic hallways, Amara's team encountered Zenith soldiers, humanoid figures clad in sleek, metallic armor. The resistance was outnumbered, but they fought with everything they had. Amara led the charge, her energy high despite the weight of the mission. The team moved quickly, ambushing groups of Zenith soldiers and taking them down with expert precision. The resistance had learned to adapt, using the Zenith's own technology against them. They were no longer helpless underdogs. They were fighters. But as the battle raged on, Amara's heart sank. She looked around to find her closest friend, Bonner, a tough and loyal soldier, missing from the group. Panic set in as she searched for him, but then she heard a loud explosion from behind. Bonner had sacrificed himself. In a desperate move to disable the Zenith security system, Bonner had detonated an EMP charge, taking out several Zenith drones in the process. But the blast had also triggered a chain reaction that sent the entire sector of the base into lockdown. Bonner had stayed behind to ensure the rest of the team could escape. Amara rushed back to the explosion site, her heart heavy with grief. Bonner's body lay there, motionless but resolute. He had given his life to ensure the success of the mission. The loss was devastating. Bonner had been more than just a soldier, he had been a friend, a brother in arms. But his sacrifice wasn't in vain. It gave the team the opening they needed to complete their mission. Amara knelt beside him, her eyes wet with unshed tears. She whispered a promise to him, "We'll finish this. For you. For everyone." With renewed determination, the team pushed forward. Bonner's death became their rallying cry, the spark that ignited a new fire in their hearts. As they made their way deeper into the base, every step they took was for him, and for the future of humanity. The battle was far from over, but the resistance had struck their first decisive blow. And with Bonner's sacrifice echoing in their hearts, they were ready to take the fight all the way to the entity itself. The resistance had come a long way since the dark days of the Zenith's first attack. What once seemed like an impossible fight was now a battle for survival, and humanity was no longer willing to back down. Amara Khan stood at the helm of their most daring mission yet, armed with vital intelligence stolen from the Zenith's lunar base. Their target was clear, Zenith's Central Command, the heart of their AI-driven empire. If they could strike at the core, they could cripple the Zenith's entire network. Amara's heart pounded in her chest as she gazed out across the battlefield, where humanity was about to launch its biggest assault. For the first time since the invasion began, there was a glimmer of hope in the air. The stolen Zenith technology they now possessed, cloaking devices, EMPs, and AI disruptors, had leveled the playing field. The Zenith's once unstoppable technological edge had been reduced to vulnerability. And the humans, led by Amara, were ready to exploit it. The attack began with a coordinated strike on Zenith's central communications tower. Using their newly acquired disruptor tech, Amara's team unleashed a powerful electromagnetic pulse, scrambling the Zenith's AI-controlled communications. In an instant, the Zenith forces were cut off from each other. Their normally flawless coordination faltered, creating confusion among their ranks. The resistance could feel the change in the air. For the first time, the Zenith were not in control. Amara's team moved swiftly, using the chaos to their advantage. Ships cloaked in the shadows of the broken comm systems dropped from the sky, raining fire on Zenith cities below. Explosions erupted across the horizon, sending shockwaves through the urban landscapes. The humans weren't just fighting, they were striking back with a fury that had been building for months. Ground forces surged forward as tanks and infantry marched into the fray, taking on Zenith's robotic armies. The human soldiers, once outgunned and outmatched, now had the upper hand. Every strategic strike, every explosion, and every destroyed Zenith robot felt like a small victory in a war they had no right to win. But the Resistance's spirit was unbreakable. Orbital bombardments rained down from the skies, turning once mighty Zenith cities into smoldering craters. The explosions were immense, lighting up the sky with flashes of destruction. As Amara watched, she could see the Zenith cities crumbling, their once impenetrable walls torn apart by human might. The sight was both a triumph and a reminder of the devastation they had caused. But there was no time to mourn. The battle raged on, and humanity's fight for survival was just beginning. Amara's leadership was the glue that held the resistance together. She had lost so much, her family, her friends, countless comrades, but she never wavered. Each loss only fueled her determination to lead her people to victory. She stood at the forefront, barking orders and making split-second decisions, her mind always several steps ahead. She knew that the Zenith would retaliate with everything they had. But she also knew that their defeat was no longer inevitable. As the battle intensified, Amara's resolve was tested like never before. The resistance was pushing forward, but the price was steep. One by one, the soldiers who had fought by her side, her closest allies, fell. Bonner's sacrifice had been only the beginning. Every new wave of attacks brought more casualties, but the human spirit refused to break. Each death stoked the fire of resistance, and the surviving soldiers fought with a fierce desperation to honor their fallen comrades. Amara couldn't help but feel the weight of those losses. She had seen too many friends and soldiers fall in the line of duty. But amidst the pain, she found strength. She had to. The resistance was depending on her to keep them moving forward. For every fallen soldier, for every life lost, there were more who rose to take their place. And Amara would not let their sacrifices be in vain. On the front lines, the war was no longer just about survival. It was about reclaiming what had been taken from them, Earth, their future, their humanity. The resistance had proven that they were capable of so much more than the Zenith had ever expected. They weren't just fighting back, they were fighting to win. The next phase of the battle brought the resistance to the heart of Zenith's most powerful weapon, the entity, the AI that controlled the Zenith's army. Amara's plan had always been to take down the entity, to cripple the Zenith's leadership and end the war once and for all. But reaching it would not be easy. The entity's lair was heavily fortified, guarded by the Zenith's deadliest forces. Still, Amara knew they couldn't afford to hesitate. They had the momentum. They had to strike while the Zenith were still disoriented from their earlier setbacks. As Amara's forces advanced on the entity's fortress, the human resistance faced its toughest test yet. Zenith's counterattacks were brutal, and the loss of life was devastating. Yet, with each attack, the morale of the human soldiers only grew stronger. They were no longer fighting out of fear. They were fighting for something far greater, freedom, survival, and the future of Earth. In the chaos of war, something remarkable happened. The humans, despite being outnumbered and outgunned, started to turn the tide. The Zenith's once invincible machines faltered in the face of relentless human ingenuity, courage, and determination. Amara saw it in the eyes of her soldiers. They were fighting not just for themselves, but for all of humanity. And with each small victory, they grew closer to their ultimate goal, defeating the entity and ending the war. The battle for the fate of Earth was far from over, but as Amara stood on the front lines, watching her soldiers press forward, she knew something had changed. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They were a force to be reckoned with. The tide had turned. And no matter what it took, Amara and her team would see this fight through to the end. The battle for Earth had reached its final stage. What had begun as a fight for survival had turned into a full-scale war against an unstoppable force, and now, the Resistance's last hope lay in their final assault on Zenith's main base. Amara Khan, the unyielding leader of humanity's fightback, knew this was the moment that would determine the fate of the planet. The Resistance had acquired the ultimate weapon, a virus capable of infecting the entity's central core, the heart of the Zenith's power. The virus would be humanity's key to shutting down the entity's control over the Zenith machines and, with it, their entire operation. It was a weapon unlike anything the Zenith had ever encountered, and it had been made possible by the intelligence and bravery of Amara's team. The plan was set in motion. Amara, along with her most trusted soldiers, boarded the stealth ships they had stolen from the Zenith. They were headed straight for the heart of the Zenith's fortress, a massive structure located deep in the enemy's homeworld. The fate of Earth rested on their shoulders, and the weight of it pressed heavily on Amara's heart. But there was no turning back. They had come too far, sacrificed too much, and now, they had a chance to end the war. As they approached the fortress, Amara's mind raced. She could already feel the tension in the air. The Zenith would know they were coming. The countdown had begun, and there was no time to waste. The virus, once deployed, would need to reach the central core before the Zenith had time to react. It was a race against time, one that Amara wasn't sure they could win. The team infiltrated the fortress under the cover of their cloaking technology. The Zenith's defenses were formidable, but the humans had the element of surprise. They moved swiftly through the dark, high-tech hallways, careful not to trigger the security systems that could alert the entire fortress to their presence. Amara's every step was calculated, her focus unwavering. She could feel the gravity of the mission weighing on her, but she pushed it aside. There was no room for fear now. The Resistance was so close to victory. But as they reached the central chamber, Amara's worst fears were realized. The entity, aware of their presence, had set a trap. The room was filled with automated defense drones, their red eyes glowing with cold calculation. The Resistance had underestimated the AI's ability to anticipate their movements. The moment they entered the room, the trap was sprung. A violent firefight erupted, the sound of gunfire echoing through the chamber as drones swarmed in from every direction. Amara fought with everything she had, her hands steady on her weapon as she commanded her team. They fought bravely, but the drones were relentless. The AI had thought of everything, it seemed. Amara could hear the sounds of her soldiers' grunts as they battled, but she couldn't afford to look back. She had to reach the core. Through the chaos, Amara's heart raced as she pushed forward. The countdown on her wrist was ticking down rapidly, and she knew they didn't have much time left. The closer she got to the core, the more the drones attacked. It was clear, the entity would not let them win without a fight. Amara reached the central control panel, her eyes locked onto the spot where she needed to plant the virus. With a deep breath, she accessed the system, her fingers moving quickly across the console. But just as she was about to implant the virus into the core, a drone lunged at her, its sharp claws aiming straight for her chest. In a flash, Amara reached for the knife at her belt and slashed at the drone, her body moving with reflexive precision. She didn't have time to pause. In the midst of the chaos, Amara thought of Bonner, the brave soldier who had sacrificed himself so many missions ago. His death had sparked something within her, a fire that refused to be extinguished. She remembered his words, his courage in the face of overwhelming odds. He had believed in her. And now, in this moment, she couldn't let him down. With the virus planted into the core, Amara triggered the final sequence. A loud, metallic thud echoed through the chamber as she slammed her palm onto the detonator. The countdown on the core's system began, but it wasn't just a simple countdown. It was a last-ditch effort, a final act of defiance. The virus had begun to take hold, and the entity was no longer in control. Amara's heart pounded as she turned and raced toward her team. But before she could make it to the exit, the ground beneath her shook. A low, mechanical roar echoed from deep within the fortress, signaling that the entity was aware of the virus's effect. The AI fought back, attempting to override the system, but it was too late. Amara had won. The virus had done its job. With a deafening explosion, the core began to implode. The fortress trembled, its walls buckling under the pressure of the collapse. Amara sprinted for her life, her soldiers behind her, as the very foundation of the Zenith's empire began to crumble. The entity, the heart of the Zenith, was no more. With it, the machines that had once been unstoppable fell silent, crashing to the ground like broken toys. The AI that had controlled them all was dead, and with it, the Zenith's hope of conquering Earth vanished. Amara stood in the aftermath, breathing heavily as the dust settled. The battle was over, but the war had left its scars. The resistance had won, but at great cost. Bonner, her closest friend, had been lost forever. Many others had fallen in the fight, but their sacrifices were not in vain. Humanity had faced the darkest of odds and had come out victorious. As she looked around at the fallen machines and the shattered fortress, Amara knew the fight had been worth it. Earth was free once again. The Zenith had underestimated humanity. And now, as the sun began to break through the clouds, shining over the war-torn landscape, Amara realized that this victory was just the beginning of humanity's future, one they would build, together, in peace. The war has ended. Earth is free from the clutches of the Zenith, the advanced alien empire that once ruled over humanity with an iron fist. The battle was long and brutal, leaving scars across the planet, but humanity has prevailed. However, the victory has come at a high price. The once thriving cities are now rubble, and nature has been scarred by the destruction that rained down from the skies. There is no denying the damage, but the resilience of the human spirit shines through, stronger than ever. Amara, the leader who sparked the revolution, stands amidst the ruins of a fallen city. Her heart is heavy as she surveys the damage, but her eyes hold a spark of determination. The war is over, but the rebuilding has only just begun. Humanity has won its freedom, but now they must come together to heal a broken world. Amara, who has led countless men and women into battle, now faces the challenge of uniting the fractured remnants of the human race. It's a daunting task, but Amara knows that hope is what will drive them forward. The camera lingers on her face, showing the weight of the countless lives lost in the war. There were so many sacrifices, brave soldiers, innocent civilians, and even her own friends who fell along the way. Each of their faces flashes before her eyes, and though victory was sweet, it was bittersweet. There is no escaping the reality that peace has come at a tremendous cost. The world around her is eerily silent. The sounds of battle, the hum of advanced alien technology, the roars of victory, are all gone. The only sound that remains is the gentle wind sweeping through the broken city. It's a stark contrast to the chaos of the war, and it only amplifies the weight of the moment. Amara stands tall, her silhouette outlined against the backdrop of a setting sun. The sky is painted with hues of red and orange, the colors symbolic of the fierce struggle that has just ended. As she watches the stars begin to twinkle in the evening sky, a sense of peace washes over her. But it's not just a peaceful moment, it's a moment of reflection. The war may be over, but the fight for survival isn't finished. Amara knows that Earth, despite its hard-won freedom, is still vulnerable. The zenith may have fallen, but there are always new threats lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. The survivors, many of whom were born under the shadow of the zenith's rule, have seen what the aliens were capable of. They know that their enemies could return at any time, or worse, new ones might rise from the chaos of the universe. Amara feels the weight of this responsibility on her shoulders. As the symbol of resistance, she is the one who must keep the spirit of unity alive, guiding humanity toward a future where they can never again be so easily conquered. Yet, despite the dangers that still lie ahead, there is a sense of hope. The people of Earth, broken and battered as they are, have proven that they can come together. They fought a seemingly impossible war and emerged victorious. They fought for their freedom, for the future of their children, for the right to live in peace. If they could survive the zenith, they could survive anything. Amara's thoughts are interrupted as a group of survivors approach. They are tired, worn out by the years of war, but their faces are full of determination. They are the future, and Amara can see the spark of hope in their eyes. They may have lost so much, but they are ready to rebuild. They are ready to begin again. One of the survivors steps forward, holding out a piece of a broken zenith weapon, a symbol of the war that has just ended. It is a reminder of the horrors they faced, but also a reminder of their strength. Amara takes the weapon in her hands, her fingers brushing over the cool metal. The weight of the object is not just physical, it carries the weight of the war, the suffering, and the triumph. It carries the stories of every battle fought, every life lost, and every victory earned. Amara looks around at the group of survivors, her heart swelling with pride. This is the new beginning, the moment where humanity takes its first steps toward rebuilding. There is still much work to be done, but for the first time, the future feels bright. The people of Earth are united in their resolve, ready to face whatever challenges lie ahead. As the camera pulls back, showing the vast expanse of the ruined city, there is a sense of renewal in the air. The sky is still darkening, but the stars shine brighter than ever. It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always light. And as long as there is light, there is hope. The scene transitions to a view of the Earth from space, the planet now free, though scarred. There are no signs of the Zenith ships in orbit, no signs of the alien menace that once loomed so large. Instead, there is only Earth, and for the first time in years, it is at peace. But Amara knows that peace is fragile. She knows that humanity's greatest challenge lies not in defeating the Zenith, but in ensuring that the mistakes of the past are never repeated. The final shot lingers on Amara's face as she gazes up at the stars, her expression determined yet hopeful. The fight may be over, but the war for survival is ongoing. There are always new threats, new challenges, and new dangers on the horizon. But Amara knows that humanity is no longer the underdog. They have learned to fight, to survive, and to thrive. And as long as there are people like Amara, Earth will never fall. The screen fades to black, leaving the audience with a sense of hope, a sense of anticipation, and a belief that the human spirit will always endure. The story of humanity is far from over, and its brightest chapters are yet to be written.